here's another algebra equation that really only has one major step, and it has fractions in it. Let me show you something that I see a lot of people make a mistake on. They go ahead and subtract 2.5 from both sides. Well, why is x not by itself? That's important to ask no matter what problem you're doing. Why is x not by itself? Because we're subtracting 2.5. I see people subtract 2.5 from both sides. I see people subtract 1 1/4 from both sides. But the 1 1/4 has nothing to do with why x isn't by itself. It's being subtracted by 2.5, so we're going to need to add 2.5. So I'm going to do this 1 1/4 plus 2.5 equals x minus 2.5 plus 2.5. Now, I know some people are more comfortable writing their numbers underneath. 1 1/4 equals x minus 2.5, and they're more comfortable adding like this. And that's okay, as long as what you do is you actually add this part and then write the whole equation down. And a lot of times you have to go over on the side and add this part. I'm going to show you how to do this using improper fractions, though, because it's pretty easy to do it that way. So this is going to be 4 times 1, that's 5/4, plus 5/2 equals, and these drop out, minus 2.5 and plus 2.5 make 0. So I'm going to write this whole equation. I don't just write this part. I write all of this down. And I can put minus 0, or I can just leave that off if you're pretty good at knowing that this makes 0. All right, the next step I'm going to do is get a common denominator. And see, this is where it's really a lot easier to have it, I'm sorry, that's a 2. To write it horizontally like this instead of like this, because you start getting too many equal signs, and what you're showing in the equation is not the same. I mean, it can just get confusing. When you get to problems that are more complicated than this, doing all of this stuff inside here can make your problem kind of messy, and you can lose track of what you're doing. All right. So this is now 5/4 plus 10/4 equals x. And be careful with this, folks. A lot of people make mistakes by not taking the time to show that step. At some point, you may get to where you can do that, but it's really best to show this step so that, and actually I'm going to want to see that because I need to see that you're not using calculators when the numbers get a little bit bigger. All right, 15/4 equals x, and then I'll simplify. X equals 3 2/4. I can do that one in my head, but if you want to, you may go over on the side, and you get 3 3/4. And that's my answer. I put a box around it. Okay, now what I'm going to do next is check it. 1 1/4 equals x minus 2.5. And this is going to be 1 1/4 equals 3 3/4 minus 2.5. Now, we can do this using improper fractions, or I can go over on the side. This time I'm going to go over on the side. 3 3/4 minus 2 1/2. And this, I will have to get a common denominator. And I get 3/4 minus 2/4. And that's going to give me 1/4. And this will give me 1. So I get 1 1/4 equals 1 1/4. You can't just say this equals this and just go straight to this step. You have to actually work this part out. You may work this out this way, Or you may work it out by getting common denominators, but you have to show those steps.